Hey everyone, this is Zeph and Moses Blacksburg back again with another interview for our Life Rescripted Summit, and today we're joined by Corey Jahnke. Now, Corey has been connecting with people on a heart level for more than 22 years in his career as a registered pharmacist. Corey has made it his life's passion to help others to find their major definite purpose for living. Corey has created many different avenues to help others brand themselves in such a way that their overall success level climbs through the stratosphere. Corey has worked tirelessly to become an expert in stress management and is dedicated to help individuals and businesses create lifestyles and programs aimed at reducing the staggering cost, which is an estimated $200 plus billion annually, to businesses and increasing personal satisfaction and productivity of the individuals whose lives have stalled or stopped completely as a result of stress and all it encompasses. And Corey, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to talk to you. As you know, I just have a passion for let's help people get unstuck and build the bridge from where they are to where they want to go.
Absolutely. And from your unique perspective, you worked in as a pharmacist for so long. You're seeing people in and out every single day, picking up medication for everything from high blood pressure, stress management, anxiety, pretty much everything under the sun. Tell me a little bit about, what you are seeing because you interact with so many different people throughout the day.
Well, the thing is that when I got out of pharmacy school, which was about 25 years ago, I didn't want to stand there and just hand out medicines all day, every day, go, here, take with food, here, take with milk, stay out of the sun. I thought that would just bore me to death. So what I did is I decided I was going to make my career about talking to people to make it more fun for me. I was 23 and I was selfish. I wanted to make it more fun for me. And so what I found is that when a guy comes in and you say, hey, what happened to your leg, man? And he would then, oh my God, you should have seen what happened. And all of a sudden, almost overnight, I didn't have customers or patients. I had friends who happened to buy medicines from me. So I was really lucky because then they would let me into their lives and teach me what they were actually going through, right? So if they're having job stress, I know it. If they're having family stress, I know it. And what happens is that number one, it's great for my business, but number two, it's great for me personally because then I get to live a lot of life experience through other people. But what happens now, we're 25 years ahead, is all of a sudden I've seen people go from 25 to 45. I've seen people go from 45 to 70 and from 70 to the great beyond.
Yeah.
And so what's really tragic now is you see a guy, say he's 30 when you
Mm-hmm.
meet him, and he's just, getting that muscle relaxer because maybe he hurt his neck or something, and he's young and he's vibrant and he's wild. Well, all of a sudden now you're seeing him at 55, and you know what happened if he took care of himself and you know what happened if he didn't. And I think that in America, we don't understand taking care of yourself. Taking care of yourself doesn't just mean exercise and eating fruits and vegetables, it also means living your passion. Because if you're not living in a space that gets you up early and keeps you up late and makes you excited, you're just sitting here waiting to die. And what happens is that translates into just what you said: high blood pressure medicine, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medicines. And I think when people don't listen to that internal voice, I think that something happens inside. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. It's funny to hear you say that they wake up early and they go to sleep late because that's actually what happens to me most of the time is my body will naturally wake me up earlier and I'll stay up until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning working because not because it's unhealthy, but more of I really enjoy what I'm working on. And I catch up on my sleep throughout the day. I'll take naps around the weekend, but it's there is a huge change that goes on in the body, and it's not just like you were saying from physical fitness or what we're eating, but this is also has a lot to do with our mind and where we're at.
Oh, yeah, because the inside of your brain basically controls everything in your body. So when you're vibrant, when you're on fire, it's releasing incredible neurotransmitters that make you feel great and do incredible things to repair your body. But when the inside of your mind is dying, it releases hormones that cause you to gain weight, cause you to gain stress, and cause you to feel lousy. And what happens is it creates this sort of a codependency cycle. Now all of a sudden you don't feel so good, so you don't feel so valuable. And you know as well as I do what that does is it strengthens the chains that are holding you captive. And
Hmm.
personally, from watching that, I find it sad. And I find it heartbreaking because here you got a guy with talent and brains and everything except the courage and confidence to step out.
So let me ask you this: how do we start to, combat this issue of people not taking this leap of faith into both, creating a life that they want, but also, working on their body and their mind and all the things that we have? How do we even start to fight this? Because, it's not like medicine where if you have a headache, you take a Tylenol and it goes away. Like, how do we fix this?
Well, I want to tell you what happened to me. So, about 5, 6 years ago, I was killing it in my job. I was actually named Walmart Pharmacist of the Year. And that was a very proud moment. And then all of a sudden, I got a new boss. And this guy wasn't impressed with the fact that I could, do really great things with customer service, that my employee engagement scores were high. This guy was an administrator, and all he wanted was for me to make a better bottom line. And he didn't care who I had to let go of or anything to get there, right? And I all of a sudden I had this major anxiety problem. I had never been anxious in my life. And for just about 10 days or 2 weeks, I was stuck in this jail that was anxiety and depression. And I didn't really even care if I lived anymore. I didn't really want to go out and kill myself, but I didn't want to live anymore. If I had to go through the next 20, 30 years of my career like this, I didn't know what I would do. And I was so stressed out, I couldn't see past it. Well, make a long story short, I made a decision that, you know what? The reason this happened to me is my possessions became more important than my life, number one. Number two, I had no exit plan. And then I remembered something. I had a customer one time. He was this older man and he was mean. And so all of my girls were afraid of him. So whenever he came to the window, it was my turn. And what happened was he wasn't mean. He just liked to play the mean, old, grumpy man. And one day he overheard a customer complaining about her job security and that she felt that she had no job security. And he said to me this, and I thought this was just brilliant. He goes, Corey, he said it loud enough so she would hear too. He says, Corey, there's never been job security. I made a fortune in transistor radios, and then someone came along and invented the television. He says, Corey, I remember as a young child watching the blacksmith sit on his hands. Here he's got the biggest house in town, but because somebody invented the automobile, he essentially lost his business. So everybody, no matter who they are, needs to be building their exit strategy, needs to be building their next career. He says, even you, he says, if you think that just because you're a pharmacist and you've got this glorious job, he says, you got to understand, maybe your health won't allow you to continue doing this. So you got to start working on your exit strategy now. So that's the key. You have to have a strategy. So here's what I did next. I took a notebook, a spiral notebook, and I drove about 90 miles away and I went to one of the famous Dave restaurants, but it's the original famous Dave's in Hayward, Wisconsin. And I sat there for about 3 hours just writing out what would my life look like if I wasn't a pharmacist? What would my life look like if it was perfect in every single way? And I tell you what, it was the most amazing experience because all of a sudden you start realizing, what do I really want?
Yeah.
Now, where the myth comes in is that you can just then step out of pharmacy and go do this when you have a family and you have bills and obligations and things like that. At 45, you're pretty well invested in your life.
Sure.
So the next thing I did is I drove for a little while thinking about it, and then I took out a separate notebook and started writing out the plan. And the plan means, okay, I wrote my first book 1/2 hour at a time.
Wow.
So every day I said I will take from 8 in the morning till 8:30 in the morning to write my book. And so, a page a day, and all of a sudden, 6 months later, you've got a book. And then, you spend the same half hour editing until the book is edited. So in a year, I had a book called We Are Not Here on Rehearsal written because that was my message to myself. Dude, this is a one-time shot. You've seen people throw it away. Don't be
Yeah.
one of those people. So the point the point is that a lot of people think if I can't do it in a month, I don't want to do it. But ask yourself, the Zephyr 5 years from now, ask him what he thinks about working on a book a half an hour a day or working on whatever it is that you really like. Building your skills, reading books that will get you into another frame of mind. If you at that point don't have the courage to step out of your profession because that's all you've ever done, then you have to do what Brian Tracy says. Do you know Brian Tracy, the motivational?
Yeah, I've been following him a lot lately, but I'm curious to hear what you have to share.
Well, Brian says this. He says that what you need to do if you're stuck in your profession is to become the best person in your profession. What most people don't realize in almost every profession, the top 20% make 80% of the money, get 80% of the awards, get 80% of the recognition, and the rest is left over for the other 80%. So your job is to put yourself in the top of your profession or to move to a new profession.
Hmm.
And the way you do that is by reading, studying, going to seminars, talking to the top people in your profession and finding out, hey, what are you doing that I'm not doing? And then it's kind of funny because when you do that, then all of a sudden you have what's called an internal locus of control, which means that you start controlling your own destiny because, quite frankly, when you're the best in your profession, you're not the only one that knows it. And all of a sudden, now your employer has a different frame of reference for you. Now, all of a sudden, you're that person they darn well better take care of because they know other people are hungry for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so it sounds like to me this doesn't necessarily have to mean quitting your job and starting something else. It sounds like this is something that's well within, your scope of if you are working for a company, this is something you can do too. So it sounds like you don't have to be an entrepreneur, don't have to leave to become an entrepreneur to do this, but more of you have to build, yourself into being, in that top 20%.
I love the way you said that because you said a key phrase. You don't have to. Most people will tell you a story that begins with, well, I'm stuck or I have to. That's what we call a lousy story. So if you want a better life, you got to tell yourself a better story. And so what we did right there is we said, okay, there's a couple of different paths, but choosing the path of I'm stuck is not a choice. That's basically sentencing yourself to an early death.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because there's never been a better time in history to go out and create the new you. Just take my wife, for example. My wife is a registered nurse, but my wife also sells a product that is a fruits and vegetables in a capsule. She's
Nice.
gotten around these people that make 3 times as much money as she does as a nurse and love their life. Well, it took one of them 5.5 years to get there. It took one of them 9.5 years to get there. My wife's been working on it now about 6 months, and I'd say she's a third of the way there. So my point is, there's this agreement that you have to make with yourself. I'm willing to put in the work now so that I can be set free, whatever that means for you. It's just that most people can't see past 2 weeks.
Yeah. And
And
it's very hard. I mean, I'm in the same boat as you actually, and I keep this on my desk at all times. Now, I didn't drive to a Famous Dave's, but I did sit down in my kitchen, and I have this big legal pad that there is writing on it. I don't know if you guys can
I
see.
can, yeah, cool.
But I literally sat down, and when I felt stuck, I was like, I really don't know what I'm doing with this year. I had been traveling all of November and December, and I got back in January because I took some time off from my business and my life. And I really sat down and I was like, here's, how many places I want to travel this year, where I want to travel to, what I want to do with my podcast, what I want to do, physically with my body, what I want to eat, what I want to work out. And I set all these goals up and I really wrote out what I wanted in my life. And then a good thing that one of my friends taught me was that you have to go through each and every single one and say why, because your why has to be big enough. Otherwise, you're not going to do it. So it's no longer you can just say I want to, here was a great example for me. I said I wanted to fix my posture, my flexibility. I've never had the best posture. I've always hunched over a little bit. And the question was, why? Well, my why was that posture is a huge issue for me. It prevents me from being able to do certain workouts and certain movements, and it causes pain every now and then. And so I had to make sure that that why was there. Otherwise, I wasn't going to accomplish it. I wasn't going to put in the work to make that happen. So this stays on my desk at all times, and it's not this one page. It's actually probably somewhere in the neighborhood of like 10 or 15 pages worth of stuff. But I totally agree with what you did there with that, and I think everybody should be doing this.
It's so important because we get into this business of telling ourselves a story about who we are. Sadly, most of the story comes from other people. Well, Zephan, you know how you are. You're never going to follow through with the posture exercises, blah, 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 blah. So we have to tell ourselves our own story. I like what Dr. Wayne Dyer said. He said, if no one told you who you were, who would you be? And there's something about writing it out. There's something your hand knows that your brain doesn't know about who you really are. And I think it's also important. And one of the things I'm really proud of you for is you're really doing a nice job of surrounding yourself with people who are bringing you up and who are showing you ideas that you might not otherwise have exposure to. Unfortunately, most people surround themselves with people who want to grab them by the feet and keep them where they are. And I think that the more we can surround ourselves with people who have ideas, who have aspirations, who really want to change the world, the more we can change our world. And I really believe that's the way we change the world, is by changing our world. What do you think about that?
I would say that's probably the first step, in creating the life that you want, or the body that you want, or the business that you want, is you have to be able to surround yourself with those people. And not only that, but I mean, I took a look around at who I was surrounding myself with. So I want to be very clear that this doesn't mean go and ditch all your friends, right? This means that you should be at least surrounding yourself and spending more time with the people that are doing and what you want to do and who are where you want to be. And
Well,
so this is something that I think is super crucial to start with, is look around at, the top 3 to 5 people that you're spending the most time with. And if they're not in alignment with where you want to go, then it's time to make a change. It doesn't mean drop them and never speak to them again. It just means you need to start seeing other people a little bit more often. And, I'm curious what you would say we should do next after that. Like, let's say I've got this whole idea of this lifestyle I want to build. I've written it out completely. I've surrounded myself with the right people. Where do I go next? Because, we're going to need the motivation to keep going. We're going to need the help to overcome a lot of obstacles that are going to get in our way. I would say next is maybe start reading or doing something for self-improvement or self-growth.
well, my second book is called Release the Genie. And I want to tell you what that means. What happens to all of us is we come up with this idea, this plan, this thought. What if I could do this thing? And we get really excited, and we have 90 seconds. We have 90 seconds to take some form of action before the gorilla shows up. The gorilla is inside of our brain, and he likes things to stay the same. He's comfortable, right? And so what we got to do is we got to take action almost immediately. And we've got to take action daily. So there's a couple different ways you can do that. You have to really consider what not taking action is costing you, or costing the people that you could help. So I like to write that out so I can see it right in front of me. Now, when I coach people, one of the things I do is I get you to describe that person that you really think your message is for. Who can you help? Now, mine is called Cynthia, as you'll see in my current book, The Successful Thinker. And I know exactly what kind of coffee filters Cynthia buys. I know everything about Cynthia, so that when I want to chicken out, or when I'm tired, or when I don't feel like moving my platform along, because you know what? We're all human beings and we all get tired. I have to do it or else I'm stealing from Cynthia.
Mm.
And you know what? It's a lot like going for a good run or a good workout. Sometimes you walk into the gym and you're like, oh God. But like 5 minutes after you get into it, it's just totally like a whole new world for you. And that's the way our work is. So we've got to make a decision based on what we can offer for starters. And then for two, we've got to stick with our plan. So what the productivity experts like Darren Hardy, the publisher of Success Magazine, or Brian Tracy talk about is show me your weekly plan. And what they'll do is they'll create it on Sunday night. So they know what they're doing on Thursday. And they say that they can pretty much predict your chances for success by whether or not you can show them your weekly plan. Obviously, a plan is a guide. You can't always stick right with a plan, but it's been proven that people with a plan have like an infinitely more chance to get where they want to go. So the big thing is that you just have to realize that every day, all day, you have to be thinking, living, breathing about where are you going, talking to that Zephin from 5 years from now, saying, hey, you know what? I can do this for you. And you also have to take one action every single day. And I think that most people don't realize the power of one action every single day. So let me give you a for instance. If I asked you, can you walk from where you are to my house? You'd go, oh, yeah, right. Because that's what, about 1,200 miles? But if I asked you, could you go walk a mile or walk for 15 minutes? And you'd say, of course I can. Well, what if you didn't turn around and then tomorrow you walked another mile or another 15 minutes? Well, all of a sudden you're closer and you're closer and you're closer. And guess what? You're getting to be a better walker. And so now you're walking 2 miles. And before you know it, you're here. So, can you walk from your house to my house? Yes. Can you do it in a day? No. But if it's a worthwhile goal, you'll do it.
And I think we make that mistake of expecting that goal to happen tomorrow. I really like that you shared how you wrote your book in that you took a half an hour each morning because so many people, all they see is, just the done product, right? And so they don't realize what had to go into getting that cover design and going through revisions and getting an editor to go through this whole thing and you having to sit there the whole time and write this all out. This was not done in a day. And I think the problem is we're in this world of such instant gratification. It's so easy for me to just go on Amazon. I actually have this thing now where on Amazon I can order something and it's at my house within an hour. They started with the free 2 day shipping. Now they have free 2 hour shipping, and if I pay a little bit extra, I can get shipping within the hour. And so, I think this is a major problem for us. Is we're so used to being able to get things right away. If you want answers, you go to Google, and within zero point 0.4 seconds, you've got your answer. And so the problem is that's not how our lives work. I mean, there's a reason why when we're born, we last for 60, 70, 80, 90 years sometimes is that, our lives were not meant to happen in a day. And so I think that we kind of have to take a step back and examine what's going on and say, look, if we were given all this time to work with, why not take advantage of all the time that we do have here?
Well, exactly. And here's the really exciting part. The really exciting part is the more you commit to your goal and the better you get at the skills and talents that it takes to reach your goal, the more your goal improves. See, just because you have a goal doesn't mean that your goal is going to stay the same. I mean, most people think that success goes like a line, right? Straight up, like a rocket leaving Cape Canaveral. But actually, it's more like a curly Q and a twist and whatever. And the more you stick to it, the more you're likely to come out where you want it to go. But what's really exciting is just what we said. The opportunity is amazing because of the technology that you just described. Do you know you can have a book published by Amazon for completely free?
Yeah.
I mean, you can go on, you can design the cover, you can upload it yourself, and you can put it up there for completely free. So we have access to technology, and you can put it on Facebook, and you can do all kinds of things for completely free. So the argument of, well, I don't have the money to become successful doesn't hold water anymore. What holds water now is, can I do something different? Can I be remarkable? Most of us are trying to look at what is someone else doing and try to follow those people. Well, that's not really the way. The way is what is no one else doing? And if you can find something that you've always wanted to do, now you should be able to recognize that it's okay to be different. See, throughout history, we've tried to make people the same. And when we make people the same, what happens is we make people replaceable. Well, your job now is to become as irreplaceable as possible. Because once you do that, then all of a sudden you begin to write your own rules. And those rules are supported by the modern technology that lets you go out there and be your own person. I mean,
Eh,
imagine this, man. You and I can have done with this conversation in 10 minutes, and we can both put out a blog in another 30 minutes saying whatever we want to say about what we believe needs to happen. That's unprecedented. That's amazing.
Oh yeah, and one thing, I'd like to add to that is just a resource that I've used when I've thought that I couldn't do something. There's a website called fiverr.com, fiverr.com. I mean, for people who are thinking, well, I couldn't design a book cover. I don't have those skills. Well, there's someone on Fiverr that for $5 is willing to design that book cover. So, something to just keep in mind is that so many people say, well, I can't do that. I don't have those skills. You'd be very surprised how affordable it really is to make, whatever your dream is actually happen.
Well, and you have to really take a look at where are you spending your money otherwise.
Right.
You just said that I could have 5 book covers made for what it cost me to go out for lunch. And can I skip a lunch to get a book cover? Oh, I think I can. Can you?
Oh, absolutely.
And yes, the Fiverr is an amazing resource, and I've used it several times. And you know what? It's fun to interact with people that are out there doing that, and it because they love doing it. That's why they do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it ultimately comes down to is, what's your motivation? What is your why? Is your why big enough that you're willing to, sacrifice that Starbucks coffee or going out for lunch so that A, you have the extra 30 minutes to do that thing you wanted to do, or B, you have the extra $10 to do that thing that you wanted to do?
Oh, I agree totally. It's one of the things that my friend Tony talks about how we have to take a look at our program. You and I have this program running all the time, and a lot of times what happens is the program dictates your actions.
Yeah.
So on every Monday night, I always watch this television show from 8 o'clock till 9 o'clock, and we think we don't have enough time. Well, what if we change the program? From 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock on Monday nights, I write my book, or I learn this skill for the job that I have, or I read someone else's book. The other thing that's really cool is, I mean, can you imagine that if you talked to my grandfather and you said, did you know that you could be on a treadmill and buy a book and download it to your Kindle within a minute? My mother's fascinated by this. She uses her Kindle on the treadmill and she can download a book in a minute. And then she can make it as big as she wants. She can brighten the background, all of this in less than a minute. And most of the books my mother gets are free. So you have access to all these free resources in a minute. And you mentioned Google before. You can look up anything. There's nothing holding you back except what's between your ears.
Yeah, I would say there's nothing holding you back but you. And I mean, you're exactly right. Is there's either a voice in our head or there's something going on, and I think oftentimes this actually comes from other people saying that you can't because they're speaking within their limitations that they are making for themselves, right? Like this is probably something that they could do, they're choosing not to, and they're choosing to listen to the voice in their head. And so they think that because they can't, you can't, because it's outside of their scope of understanding or comprehending. And so I think that we have to be very conscious of sharing the things that we want to do with the world, because there are going to be a lot of people who come back and say, oh, you can't do that. Well, guess what? People thought that we couldn't go to the moon and said that we wouldn't make it to the moon, and we did. And so I think that we just have to be very careful and very cautious and just very self aware of what is the story that we're telling ourselves and what are we actually listening to when we share it with other people.
Oh, I think that's so true because when you actually talk to really successful people, people that have just, nailed it in their industry, most of them will tell you, I didn't ever see this coming. John Maxwell told me, he said, Corey, it took me 18 years to become an overnight success. And then all of a sudden, all he does is speak. He's got people who write his books for him. He's got people who does all his traveling. And before he knew it, he actually teared up and he said, "Look, so many great things have happened to me that I don't even know if I deserve, but I never saw them coming until they were here." And I think one of the things that's really interesting is we said technology has changed amazingly, but you know what? People haven't changed. If
Yeah.
you read Napoleon Hill, the author of Think and Grow Rich, he says this. He says that 2% of the people will live with what he called a definiteness of purpose. The other 90% or 98% will drift their way through life. And what you want to do is become part of the 2%. People will always find excuses. People will always try to hold other people down because, like you said, if they can't do it, they don't think you can do it. And they don't want you to do it because then you will cement the fact that they probably could do it, but they aren't doing it. But I want to tell you something. The best lesson I ever got came from my Uncle Gene. Every year we have this family reunion, and him and I are standing outside of the fire, and he's about 85. And he said something to me that I'll never forget. He said, there's going to come a day in your life when you're going to look back on something and you're going to say, you know what? I could have made that happen. I just didn't try hard enough. And he said, don't ever let that happen to you. And so I'm telling your listeners, there's going to come a day in your life when you're going to look back on it and say, hey, I could have made that thing happen. I just didn't try hard enough. Or you're going to be able to tell someone, you know what? I was scared to death. I didn't think there was any way I could make this happen. And you know what? I had to try. And I tried. And before I knew it, boom, I was there. And you can talk like my Uncle Gene, who did make it happen. And you know what's funny? The reason he knew that is because of a conversation he had with a gentleman who was older than him that went the same way. Funny
Nice.
how life works, right?
It's very funny, and I really love what he taught you there, and I think that's we couldn't end this conversation on a better note because that's an amazing lesson, and I know that you have a lot of really great resources on your website that you want to share with our listeners today. Would you mind sharing, your website URL and what you have for them?
Well, what I want people to be able to do is to be able to find those resources at a super low cost to get to know me. So my website is CoreyJahnke.com. It's CoreyJahnke.com. And the first thing you get is the free download of my manifesto, which is called A Brief Guide to Saving the Planet: How to Think, Act, and Lead Like a Superhero. If you like the manifesto, you can join my Hero Leadership Academy for $1. It's a $1 course. $1 is all you'll ever pay for that course. And it'll teach you about the 5 internal villains and the 5 external villains that are holding you back. Nothing should hold you back. But I'm going to give you the strategies and the tactics and the techniques to get around these bureaucrats, robot people, zombies, policy stormtroopers, and the drama queens that are holding you down. I'm going to help you get around them, go over them, go through them, but never let them stop you from your dreams.
That is awesome. I can't wait to check that out myself, and I'm so happy that you're sharing that with everyone. And one more time, what's the website URL for that?
It's Corey, Corey, Jahnke, Jahnke.com, and you'll have access to all my free resources, and I'll look forward to meeting you there.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, Corey. And I think that it was your grandfather, right, who told you that one quote?
It was my Uncle Gene.
Your uncle. So, man, I think that's some really powerful stuff. I mean, I would definitely write that down and keep that in front of me at all times. And I thank you for sharing that.
Oh, it was the greatest gift anyone ever gave me. He's the one that named my book, my first book, We Are Not Here on Rehearsal, because he said, you know what, if you think that you're going to get another life, you don't have another life in the bank.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I'm sure we'll be speaking with you very soon.
Oh, I so enjoyed it. I hope everyone out there has a wonderful day.